Welcome to North Node, the Yoga and Astrology podcast. I'm Becky, a yoga teacher, astrologist, and businesswoman.
And I'm Laura, founder of Soul Sanctuary Studios, yoga teacher trainer, and wellness coach and consultant. In this podcast, we'll be diving into down-to-earth but deep soul conversations.
We'll explore how you can connect and stay on purpose with your true north alignment through the transformative lenses of yoga and astrology.
Each episode is designed to inspire and guide you on your own journey towards self-discovery, self-love, and personal growth. We'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. Your support will help us reach more listeners who are looking for insightful discussions and meaningful connection.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Okay, today's episode is going to be all about sleep and dreams. So, as always, Laura and I bring in our personal experiences and different things really that have called our interest as we've prepared for this episode. I feel like the best way for us to start and introduce this is maybe just talk about sleep and the science of sleep. So, yeah, I'm going to let you do that, Laura.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So this is just a real basic, how does sleep work? What are the stages? What is the brain doing? And then I think we'll get onto some more juicy stuff, probably from you, Beck, which is more about, what we're dreaming about and what it might mean. So if we just cover the basics, so sleep is basically divided into two major themes. So you've got your non-rapid eye movement, NREM as they call it, or rapid eye movement, which is REM sleep. And these occur in cycles throughout the night. So you've got NREM, which is stages 1 to 3. And that's basically cycling through stage 1, which is light sleep. And that's transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. Lasts a few minutes. So that's when brain activity slows and your muscles relax. Then you've got stage 2. So that's when your heart rate and breathing slows down further. That's when your body temperature drops and your brain waves slow down. So you will have spindles, you'll have like bursts of activity linked to memory processing in stage 2. And this is all in this NREM sleep. So the non-rapid eye movement. And then stage 3, which is deep sleep, or the slow wave sleep. So this is the most restorative phase of sleep. And this is basically where the body repairs tissues, strengthens immune system, and consolidates memories, interestingly. So that's all happening in NREM, stages 1 to 3. And then you've got REM sleep. So this is your dreaming phase. And so this occurs about 90 minutes into sleep. And this is where your brain activity becomes more like wakefulness. The eyes are moving rapidly, so it's like you're awake, but obviously you're dreaming. So that's when you might see things that you would see when you're awake coming from the subconscious. The breathing is irregular, vivid dreams occur. So REM sleep is crucial for emotional regulation, learning, and memory processing, which we'll come to touch back on when we look at what our dreams mean. So a full sleep cycle is where you've got your NREM and your REM, which lasts about 90 minutes. And we go through 4 to 6 cycles of that a night, ideally, unless you have children, in which case you may not complete one. Speaking from I. So something that can help sleep regulation is the circadian rhythm. And most people will have heard about this, but it's basically this 24-hour internal clock that we have. And it's controlled by light and darkness. So exposure to light is basically how much daylight we have during the day can then improve our sleep, because it's kind of saying to the brain, right, you've been in daylight this amount of time, so now it's time to go to sleep. And that's why blue light can affect us so much from screens, because it really messes with that natural circadian rhythm. So the functions of sleep, why sleep's really important, is that it's memory consolidation. So this strengthens our learning, our problem solving abilities, physical restoration. So this is where we get muscle growth, tissue repair, and immune function improves. Emotional regulation, so it helps process emotions and reduce stress. And then cognitive performance, so attention, decision making, and reaction times. And that's why, like, when I read that, even just kind of researching for this podcast, it really hammers home like how important sleep is. And I think in our culture, and maybe I should speak for my on this, but like we're so achievement based, productivity based, that sleep is often the thing for me that gives. So, I would, when I have the energy, I'll quite happily work until like midnight, 1 o'clock, and then I just wake up at 6 o'clock. So, I can be running on 5 hours sleep for quite a long time. And unsurprisingly, then, your immune system is so weakened, like you've got a short fuse, emotional regulation goes out the window. So it's such a simple thing, isn't it? And it's like, why don't we just go to sleep? Like when the kids go to sleep, why don't I just go to sleep? And it makes a huge, huge difference. And actually, I've been doing that and it has made a massive difference, unsurprisingly. Um, so that's kind of how sleep works. So then, why do we dream? Maybe Beck, you can kind of give your first thoughts on this, or anything that you want to add, I suppose, before that on the sleep side of things.
Yeah, I think on the sleep side of things, yeah, there's a reason why they use sleep deprivation, isn't there, in like torture and things like that, because it is literal torture to be kept awake. So no wonder, yeah, when we've got small children and we can't sleep, that we end up making decisions that are just not aligned with our highest interest or rational, it's hard to be rational when you haven't had sleep. And I'm sure I read somewhere that women need more sleep than men. Have you read that?
No, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, it's true. No,
Yeah.
I definitely read that somewhere. And I think it's like to do with our hormones and stuff like that, that our hormonal cycle is takes so much energy. And, maybe it is partly some of the things that we've talked about before as well, where women are often doing more than 50% more than their fair share. So yeah, sleep, very important, definitely from a like practical and health perspective. I think it's something that should be prioritized more than we do in our world. And I think you're right. I think that comes from productivity. Um, and also distraction. I get that, what you said. Why don't we just go to sleep when the kids go to bed? We need our sleep. But it's like, oh, you've been mother and whatever all day. You just want that hour, don't you? You just want that hour where you can sit on the sofa and like eat your mint arrow and watch Netflix.
I feel like you're speaking to myself. Yeah, that's it. And then it goes on for 2 hours and 3 hours, just loving that me time. And then you're grouchy in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. And especially like, look at how much TV has changed. I mean, I grew up and my mum and dad, they would always put the TV on, but it would be like a drama that was on for an hour. And then you had to wait a whole week for the next episode. And then with Netflix, like we've got these whole series where you're like, ah, it's 45 minutes. I'll just watch one more. And then before you know it, it's 1 a.m. and so
Easily
yeah,
done.
easily done. So dreams. Yeah, I think that in the Western world and the culture that we live in, like there is no emphasis, not enough emphasis given to dreams, where we're just sort of told it's our brain processing stuff that it needs to process, and it's a lot of junk. A bit like, there's that thing around, I don't know what percentage it is, but a certain percentage of our DNA is junk. I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it. We just don't have the tools and the science to explain it. And I think that's true with dreams. And I think we need to move away from needing the science all the time to explain everything. So, I don't think dreams are random. I feel like every dream is important in some way. Yeah, some of it could just be the brain processing information and consolidating memories and stuff like that. Maybe like having a little software upgrade at night. But I just think that doesn't fully explain the depth and the clarity that we sometimes get in dreams or sleep experiences, or like prophecy that can happen in dreams. I just don't believe that they're meaningless. And I think we're doing ourselves out of a lot of like good shadow work and a good and seeing our dreams as like a spiritual experience, which is what I think they are.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of different kind of theories, aren't there, on dreams. Some people think that it's memory consolidation, so organizing and processing memories from the day, um, and maybe strengthening like important connections and then letting go of ones that aren't important. Emotional processing, so it helps us process emotions, particularly stressful or traumatic experiences. Problem solving, so it can help with creative thinking by making like unusual connections between ideas. We were saying how sometimes, you have a dream, you're like, that's a brilliant idea. Try and write that one down. It's usually gone by the time you try to write it down. Artistic ideas often being inspired by dreams. And then you've got like the psychoanalytic side of things, and Freud often said that dreams reveal unconscious desires and repressed thoughts. And then there's the Harvard scientist, which basically said that they're a brain's way of making sense of random neural activity during sleep, which is kind of what you're saying, that saying it's random and that the brain's trying to make sense of it. The brain essentially trying to create a story from scattered signals. But again, I mean, what we're going to go on to talk about a little bit more is like, how can we even use that information just to learn about ourselves? Not necessarily believing the story of it all, but what's behind the story? What could we look at to grow? Yeah.
Yeah, the same way that, we can use our yoga practice, like what is coming up for me when I feel into, how it feels for me to do, I don't know, a crow pose, what comes up for me. It's the same thing. Like it's not necessarily the story of the dream, although it can be. It is, yeah, what is coming up for me when I feel into this dream? What are the emotions? And what is it bringing up in me? And for me, like dreams are the kind of ultimate proof that, we exist beyond the confines of our human body. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to dream. And I sort of think that's why dreams might get downplayed a bit in our society as well, because we don't acknowledge the afterlife. We don't acknowledge anything outside of this physical reality in the mainstream. But yeah, for me, dreams prove that, the human, well, not the human, the soul's existence is so powerful that it can transcend the confines of the human body. And I also feel like that's maybe why we do need to dream, why we do need to sleep. We spend two-thirds of our day in this physical reality doing all the things that we need to do, like humaning stuff. And then, think about it, when we're asleep, we're not in contact with our human so much. It's like it is that connection back to spirit, back to oneness, because we're not restricted by the body. So whether we believe in afterlife or whatever exists beyond this reality, the fact that our soul needs to visit somewhere else or continues to have an experience, yeah, to me it shows the importance of like a spiritual connection.
I think that ties us really nicely into like the yoga perspective on sleep and dreams in particular. So in yoga, they talk about having three states of consciousness and potentially four, depending on how you view it. So it categorizes these into these primary states. So you've got Jagrat, which is the waking state. And this is the state of external awareness where we engage with the world through our senses, which is kind of what you're talking about when we're like humaning. And then you've got Swapna, which is the dreaming state. So this state of inner experience where the mind creates a world independent of the senses. So what's going on in the internal world, which is often what we tap into in when we're in those yoga poses. And then you have Shushupti, which is this deep sleep state, a state of formless awareness beyond thoughts and ego. And so dreams or swapna occur when the conscious mind is inactive, but the subconscious continues processing all these stored impressions, or what we call samskaras in yoga. So these like deeply trodden pathways, things that have happened in the past. So we're processing them. And they're considered a bridge between the waking reality and the deeper layers of consciousness, which is really interesting then when you start looking at like the Om in yoga. So what you're talking about is this awakened state. So being awake and actually being like humaning, the doing of stuff. And then there being the inner world. And that actually when we're in that waking state, it's what they call the Maya, the illusion of the material world. So all this like doing thing that we're doing is just the illusion. And we cycle between being awake and being asleep. And that's kind of this practice of bridging that state. And you see this in the Om sign. So when we look at the Om sign, you've got these parts of the Om. So you've got the lower curve or the R of the Om, which is the waking state. And that's waking consciousness, or Jagra, as we were just talking about. So that's awareness of the physical world, sensory experience, humaning, if you like. Then you've got the middle curve, which is also the U, so Aum, when you're talking about Om as the middle bit. And that's dreaming state. So this is that swapna, which is the dreaming consciousness and the realm of thoughts, imagination, subconscious activity. Then you have the upper curve, or the M in Om, and that represents deep sleep. So this is this rest, unawareness, where the ego actually dissolves. And then in the Om symbol, you have the dot, or the bindu they call it, which represents pure consciousness, or Turiya. And Turiya is this fourth state, which is beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It is pure awareness or enlightenment, which is where we have unity with the universe. And then you've got the crescent. So you've got this Om symbol, then you have the crescent, and then you have the dot. And that crescent is the Maya, is the illusion. It's that curved line which separates the dot, so that kind of bliss, that Turiya, that pure consciousness, is separated by the Maya, by the illusion, which is that material world. And then before that is this just being awake and being asleep and cycling through these stages. So if we can do the work, whilst we're cycling through those stages, to realize that Maya is the illusion, that we can bridge the gap from waking state into that pure consciousness, or that dot, or the Turiya, as they call it in yoga. And that's sometimes what we can experience through meditation, through these deep spiritual practices. Sometimes they call it in the 8 limbs like samadhi, where we have this blissfulness, this absolute understanding that we are all connected. There is no separation, and that the material world is the illusion, is the Maya, and that we're just cycling through these stages, doing the work really to cross that bridge into this understanding that we are all just pure consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like ironic, isn't it? One of those practices being Yoga Nidra, that is a practice where you're trying to maintain that state of awareness where you can see that both sides exist, the place between wakefulness and asleep. So the idea that it's called Yoga Nidra, yoga sleep, but it's actually massively a doorway into spiritual awakening, right?
Exactly, and that's the paradox of the practice. So yeah, Nidra means sleep in Sanskrit, but it is a practice to facilitate awakening through using sleep zones. So if no one's tried it before, Yoga Nidra looks like a grown-up sleepover where people just come to the studio, they lie on a load of mats, put blankets over them, and there's no yoga poses whatsoever. You are lying down. And what they say about Yoga Nidra is that in order to practice Nidra, you have to repay a sleep debt. So when we have a lack of sleep as a human, it doesn't just disappear, a bit like money, right? It stays, and we have to do a lot of sleep to repay the sleep debt, because the only way that you can really work on these levels is not by dropping into deep, deep sleep, because then you aren't lucid enough to be able to work through what's going on. So often when you start Yoga Nidra, most of us are so sleep deprived in the West that you're going to fall asleep the first few, maybe weeks, even months. And that's why sometimes it's good to practice Nidra at home first, because you can genuinely just have a good sleep until you're ready to come and actually practice and experience like the guided meditation fully, rather than just falling asleep. So the idea is that Yoga Nidra puts you in what's called hypnagogic state. So the meditation should be actually kind of so boring that it sends you off to sleep, and it's taught in such a monotonous and like your words are spaced out in such an order that it's kind of like a metronome, like it just sends you into this sleep state, but it's loud enough and you're maybe walking close enough to the people in the room so they're just staying between that wakefulness and sleep zone, which is called hypnagogic state. And that is where we are most able to heal. That is also where we are our most creative. And it's where the conscious and the subconscious mind blend. So we're highly receptive in this state, which is where it's really useful for affirmations, for learning, and for emotional processing. But it's where we're also our most creative. So if the meditation, often it is in Nidra, may ask you a question like, once you've worked through emotions in your body, so is there a prevalent sensation in your body? Where is the most prevalent sensation? What texture does it have? What color does it have? What image comes to mind? An image may come to mind, which is, hopefully then the person will ask, and if that image had an emotion, what emotion would there be? So you're starting to understand that this prevalent sensation in your body, sometimes a pain, sometimes an illness, has an emotion connected to it. And the image that arises gives you the tools to figure out what that emotion might be. And then if you were to welcome that, like you were saying, like an old friend in our old podcast, in the previous podcast we did, these emotions come to visit us. If we can be in welcoming and kind of open the door and sit with them and go, what do you want? What do you need? Then we have an opportunity to truly listen to our body. And they say, don't they, listen to the whisper, don't wait for the shout. So if you spend time like this practicing these sort of practices, which get you in touch with what is going on in your subconscious, what emotions need to be heard, then it stops the body from having to shout physically, from expressing pain or illness in that way, because we can tune into the emotional origin of that disease that's happening in the first place. So it's really powerful when you can start working with some of these sleep zones. Yoga Nidra is absolutely amazing for that. But, if it's not about disease and health, sometimes it is about relationships. Sometimes it is about creativity, getting ideas. So there's a lot in it. And it's, on the outset, it could just look like a load of people having a kip in a room. But the work that they're doing on their inner world is really quite substantial. So yeah, worth having a go if you've never done it before.
Yeah, I love Yoga Nidra. I think it's a really powerful practice. And
Yes.
I think it can also train us to be lucid while we're asleep. And in some cultures, in Buddhism, there's a belief that if we can awaken within a dream when we're asleep, and lucid dream, where we're then sort of consciously creating the next stages of the dream, that we can awaken in life. We can have a spiritual awakening and see life through a new lens. And as training for the afterlife as well, like there being that when we've passed into whatever reality exists beyond this one, that we have practiced lucid dreaming so that we can awaken in the afterlife, so that we can make a conscious choice about what we do next. So that can be a spiritual practice in itself as well, with the goal of kind of mastering consciousness beyond the physical form, and moving towards, that state of enlightenment.
Okay, so Beck, what are your thoughts on like where you go or what actually happens when you're dreaming?
So I feel like there are a few different possibilities here. So if you believe in astral travel, and there are quite a few books around this that can be really interesting to read, it's that your astral body, the part of you that is not connected to your human, well, it is through it's can be viewed as like a silver um, rope or cord that keeps you connected energetically to your body, that you visit the astral plane, which is just a different dimension. So, this idea that your dreams are like an unconscious out of body travel where the soul leaves the physical form of the body. And like we've probably all experienced this, where we have a dream where we're in a place that is familiar, but it's not exactly as we see it in our human form, or even we can dream with other people, right? That are in our conscious reality, or maybe not. Um, and so my belief is like when we dream about other people, like we have it's like our higher selves have an agreement that part of us that transcends this human reality is agreeing with the higher self of the other person that we're going to have this experience in this dimension. And okay, so like why do we do that? I believe it's often so that we can experience something that we wouldn't be able to in the physical reality because it's just like not possible, that our soul is going to benefit from. And not all dreams are nice, right? Sometimes we have good dreams, what we would label as good dreams, and not so good dreams. Um, but what is to be learned? What do we feel when we tune into that like less positive dream experience as well? There's always something there to go at. And I also believe, and some spiritual traditions teach this, that during sleep, we sort of can meet with our guides, spirits, parallel versions of ourselves as well. So we can dream of ourselves like in a different reality. And we can, of course, dream of loved ones that have passed over as well. And those spiritual traditions would teach that, that is an actual agreement and a meeting of souls in the astral realm. I believe you can also access what are called the Akashic records, which are like our past life memories to simplify it, where we can access those and receive the knowledge of whatever is in the Akashic records through dreams as well. So the Akashic records can hold past life knowledge, but they can also hold the knowledge of many different timelines. So it's like if ever you have that experience of like a download in your sleep of like you need to know this information and it's important and you're like, oh, I'm going to remember that in the morning, but you don't. Like you've got to wake up and write it down. Because that's like a message from the Akashic records to tell you that something is important for you right now for the timeline that you're on. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about what I feel dreams are. What about you? What do you feel about dreams?
Um, I've always had really vivid dreams, and Adam gets so bored in the morning when I'm like, "You will not believe." He's like, "Go on, what happened?" I've just, yeah, I feel like I've always had very, very vivid dreams. Some of them, yeah, being quite lucid and like, "Oh my God, I'm dreaming, but this is really happening." And yeah, often used to dream about my dad. Haven't done for a long time, and and I said to you, Beck, it was about like he's always very poorly, and I'm trying to like hold him up. So I think there's a lot in them. For me, like there always seems to be a pattern. So if something or someone kind of flashes up during the day and I go, God, that's bizarre, and then don't think about it anymore, when I go to bed, I can be sure that that's the thing that my brain will explore. Um, and I think it's a way of me kind of, yeah, looking into things a little bit more deeply. Um, but they like I get like dream hangovers. Like if I've had a really vivid dream, it takes me a minute, like in the next day, like I need to go for a run or have a shower or something to like go, God, like that wasn't real, and none of that was real. Um, because they're really, really potent and it can be kind of exhausting. You want to go to sleep and like switch off. And sometimes I don't. I go to sleep and I'm like even more on than when I'm awake. And then I'm awake again and I'm like, no, I just need a break from all this like being awake constantly thing. So I think they're really powerful. And I think, Yoga Nidra has been amazing in kind of teaching me a lot about how you could use them for emotions. More just like when I started Yoga Nidra, I was like, what are all these people talking about? They've seen like a parrot or a tiger or like, they're all on something. And what I have like come to realize is that it's about leaning into the imagery rather than like waiting for the thing to actually walk in the room, right? It's about going, yeah, this is the imagery that's arising for me, and then using that as like, what are the emotions behind that and what do I need? And so that's what I tend to try and do with dreams now, is just kind of go, what's the emotion there, what's behind them, what do I need, um so that I think they're useful in that way. I mean, sometimes they're so practical. I was saying to you, like, I will literally have a dream about like taking my earrings off and then being the earrings that my dad gave me, and then me being like, oh my God, and waking up and being like, go and get them. They're in the pocket of the thing that, you're going to lose those if you don't go and get them, or we haven't ordered enough handbooks for the training. And then I'll wake up and be like, order the handbooks. Like things that I'm so grateful for that I genuinely I don't think would have thought of. Which is always a nice feeling because you feel like someone out there's kind of looking out for you on the small stuff. Um, but something I found really interesting about what you were saying, Beck, was about how we used to sleep like collectively in like tribes and villages. Do you want to talk on that a bit?
Yeah, so I feel, there's sort of two conflicting schools of thought, isn't there, about sleep? And um, for me, like I enjoy sleeping on my own. I feel like it's peaceful, and especially like the stage of life that I'm in, perimenopause, I can get hot. I don't sleep as deeply as I did, and I feel like for women, as soon as we have babies, I don't think our sleep is ever the same again. So I enjoy sleeping on my own. But then of course, if we go back to sort of tribal days, then we would have slept in groups, as families next to each other. And, for safety. And yeah, we didn't all live in like individual houses like we do right now. And I think, the science on this, to talk a little bit about science, is, when we sleep next to someone, we can produce oxytocin, that hormone that makes us feel really good, emotionally bonded to the person that we're next to, can help us make us feel safe and connected to that person as well, which is great. But it can also mean that we produce cortisol because maybe we get so stressed about being next to the other person. Maybe they snore, maybe they talk in their sleep, maybe they just move a lot. But also energetically, once we're in proximity to someone, we're interacting with each other's energy field. So we're constantly then interacting with each other's energy field. If, traditionally, like you sleep in the same bed as your partner. And what that can mean is like when our energy fields are constantly interacting, it means like we can often find it hard to resolve problems actually. Um, because at a unconscious level, our energy fields are still working with each other and we're absorbing each other's energy, and there's no time for like self regeneration. And this can be like sometimes if you go away for like a night or two away from your partner and you come back, there's like this sense of fresh energy and you're able to meet them in a new and like cleaner way, like you feel cleansed. That's like a real thing. Um, so I think that's interesting. And I think, like as a society, we've become more individualized than we were like back in those times. And so at the moment, we're in like a society where it's normal to sleep with your partner in the same bed as them, but no one else, unless you're having a certain type of relationship. But like the status quo is like you sleep on your own or you sleep with your partner, but it's almost like this hybrid situation because we've become very individualized, but we're still like sleeping next to our partner. So and also from a human design perspective, and human design is a system that is like astrology really fused with the chakra system and other things, which I'm not going to talk about here, but it's like different energy types definitely need to sleep on their own because they will absorb their partner's energy and that can disrupt their health and their balance. So I think it's a really interesting topic. And like for me, yeah, I love it sometimes when like my husband will go out for the night and I'll be like on my own for the night. But like I'm not going to instigate that topic of, let's have separate bedrooms because like, yeah, I think yeah, he wouldn't be able to see that for what it was. I think you've got to be very secure in your relationship and not see it as a, yeah, like distancing yourself from your partner. You're doing it so that you can meet them like in a way that you want to meet them and not have disrupted sleep and be in each other's energy all the time, because I don't think it does you any good. But we're not there yet. So um yeah, but I think it needs to be normalized more for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. And it's interesting that you put that down to security in relationships because I can really see that. I think, yeah, that brings up a lot for me and thinking like, I don't think Adam wouldn't like that. He'd worry. He'd think I was like, yeah, not wanting to be near him. I think actually for me, I'm so like self-driven and productive, like a bit obsessed with that, that having to sleep next to someone actually like forces me to kind of connect and come back to like something else other than like productivity and like me and achievement and drive and all that stuff. So it's interesting, isn't it? But I mean, at the moment, God, you would laugh. So we're obviously staying with the in-laws because we're like between renovations. We bought a house on auction, so it needs some renovating. And so in our current bedroom, it's quite a small bedroom, we're in the bedroom. I've got Lenny next to me on a mattress on the floor, and then at his toes, I've got Theo in a cot. And so all of us are in one room. And it's interesting. Like only the other day, I was looking at Theo in the cot and just felt really sad. I was like, and he doesn't understand because when I put Lenny to bed, I'll like lie next to him and like give like stroke his hair. And then Theo stands up in his cot and goes nuts because he's like, "Let me in! Like, let me in for that cuddle. Why am I in baby jail and you guys are having a nice cuddle down on the mattress? Like, what's this all about?" And I feel a bit like that sometimes. I'm like, who invented the cot? Because it's brutal. Like, we're all allowed to wander around, and like Lenny can creep into bed and snuggle with me, and I'll cuddle Adam. And then there's just little Theo, like behind baby jail. I just think it's really mean. But at the same time, I've got a function, and those days where I know, if he's teething or whatever, and I'll grab him out and give him a cuddle, trying to sleep next to a baby at night, apart from the fear of like Adam squashing him or, the duvet going over his face or whatever, like you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. It is such a really hard thing. But yeah, I think there is something about that togetherness and like sleeping. It's funny, like in my head with the boys, I've always got the textbook of like, don't sleep next to your kids. So I don't, right? They've always had their separate beds. But there's always this like little rebel in me that's like, oh, I just want a cuddle. And I love nothing more than when I cave and go, yeah, come in and have a cuddle. Like it just feels amazing. And it does make me question, like, apart from safety, which is obviously a real thing, but why is there all this emphasis on separate sleeping? Like, where does that come from? And I get it from an energetic perspective, like I'd be exhausted, but it does feel a bit mean to put the kids like they're not allowed to leave their beds?
I think babies and children are different because, babies are still adjusting from coming from, their souls coming from the spirit world and like living in a human body. And they've shared the same energy field as their mother, like when they were in the womb. And in fact, children share the same aura and nervous system as their mother until they're like 7 or something. So I think that's different. I think it's different when it's your baby and it's your child, your small child. I agree with you. I mean, when I had my first child, I mean, I was in a very different headspace. The world was different. I mean, she's nearly 13 now, but there was a lot of like sleep training stuff around. Like that was the thing to do at that time. Um, but do I think like retrospectively, like that is the right thing? Absolutely, like no. But I sort of can't change how I did things then. So, yeah, I think it's a really complex subject. And I think the main issue with sleep for me, all the things that I've just talked about, yeah, should we, as individualized adults, like, should we actually be looking to come back to a more community perspective where then there isn't so much pressure to be productive and to have to show up in a certain way, which would mean like we wouldn't need to sleep separately, which is what I've said. Um, yeah, and I think that's really interesting. And I think that, the problem is, well, there are two problems for me. One is we live in a world where women and children are not at the center of everything. What's at the center is productivity, number one. And I think the second problem is as a society and as the world, we don't understand energy. We don't understand energy. We only understand like what science can tell us. And if we understood energy, I think more mothers would sleep next to their small children because they would understand their energy field is their baby's energy field. Well, I mean, there are books around this now, starting to be spoken about a lot more, isn't it? Co-sleeping and stuff like that being important, or, an alternative way of doing things. But understanding how your energy field is impacted and can impact someone else's energy field. Like, if we understood that, maybe what we would do is still sleep together, but maybe we'd have energetic practices that we do before we go to sleep, like have a shower and I don't know what, set sage or Palo Santo, and then like you would create an energetic bubble, like all kinds of things that you would do if you understood energy.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Okay, and so we often hear of, certain dreams meaning certain things. So what are your thoughts around that? What are some of the common ideas around what we see in dreams and what they might mean?
Yeah, I think there's often a message in dreams, especially if they're recurring, or like maybe certain thing comes up regularly for you at different points, like relating that to what's going on in your reality. So yeah, I feel like some of the common things that can come up in dreams are people have dreams about their teeth falling out. I've had this quite a lot actually in dreams. So that can be representative of like anxiety, fear of losing control. Um, and it can be like a prophecy of a major life transition coming up as well. So yeah, that can be a big one. Snakes can come up in dreams a lot as well. And, I think it is about like, what does the snake mean to you? But snakes are very transformative, right? They shed their skin. Um, so leaning into that, what does that mean for you? And also like fear. Snakes can represent like a hidden fear and also hidden wisdom. Snakes are really wise creatures. They know when to eat, and they don't do that sort of regularly. They know when to hide. They know when to strike as well. So there could be like some wisdom that you need to tune into if you're dreaming of snakes. What else can come up? Like being chased. Being chased can come up. What are you running from? Right? What are you avoiding in life? What confrontation are you not facing? Being lost or trapped, that can relate to feeling stuck in your waking life, feeling trapped in your waking life. Um, and I think if you dream of other people or animals, they can often be like unacknowledged parts of ourself. And I think it's like up to you to translate what that is. Yeah, we can Google and we can go look, which can help see what other people have felt. But I think it's like really tuning into that yourself. Flying as well can be like, yeah, where do you want your life to take off? It can be that. But I think also flying can just be like, don't be limited by, don't believe that you're just stuck in this human body. Like, what are the possibilities? And yeah, but like believing in energy beyond this physical reality. Children dream of flying quite a lot. It can be like a really common like childhood dream, when we're sort of closer to, yeah, whatever is beyond this reality when we're in childhood, because that's where we've come from. So Yeah. And then I think with any nightmares or like shadow dreams, it's really asking what is this dream wanting to show you? And I recommend like journaling or meditating on that to get to like what are the deeper meanings there for you. Seeing dreams as opportunities really to grow, like you were talking about with the Yoga Nidra.
Yeah, I love all of that, and I often Googling, what does my dream mean when I wake up? And actually, sometimes it's something that I got into a few years ago, and I read the book called Signs. It's by Laura Lynn Jackson, Secret Language of the Universe, and it's really beautiful. It talks about kind of seeing the signs and seeing the magic in life, and how if we see a deer, it usually represents, a past loved one, lots of different signs, what they actually mean. So I think when you start getting into this work and you can really, read your dreams and look into them and go, what do I need to do? What's the message for me here? But then that can carry on, that can carry on during the day. And I think that's just a lovely way to live, again, just being connected to the possibility. And even if you're not convinced on it all, as you were talking, it was just kind of reminding me like just how useful these questions are. Dreams aside, asking yourself, am I running from anything? Do I feel trapped by anything? So, whether you believe it or not, I think just asking yourself those questions and journaling on them is only going to be able to help, move us forward in our journey.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's just more um, self-reflection, isn't it? Really, it's just another tool to reflect through or with.
Yeah. So something else that people talk about is sleep paralysis. Is this something you have any experience of, Beck, or anything that you want to share on that?
Yeah, so people might have experienced sleep paralysis, which is this it tends to happen when you've just fallen asleep, right? Where you can't move. Um, so the brain has woken up, but the body is still in that kind of paralyzed sleep state. And it can also feel like pressure on the chest. Um, so yeah, there are kind of different interpretations of this. So some ancient cultures saw sleep paralysis as like an encounter with a spirit or a demon or an otherworldly entity. Um, and in Hinduism, sleep paralysis can be actually seen as a sign of spiritual awakening because, it's that juncture where the astral body is re-entering the physical body, but the brain has already woken up. So, it's like this evidence that the soul is kind of in between physical and the non-physical realms. So, some other people say that it can be like something known as psychic attack, which is like an energetic intrusion into your energy field, like that evil eye idea, of somebody who has got it in for you, or whether that's a human or yeah, something beyond this world that feed on the energy of fear, because that's what we fear. That's what emerges from our energy field when we're in sleep paralysis. So sleep is this really vulnerable state, right? So it is a prime time for energetic interference, especially if you've got a lot going on in your life or a lot of unresolved trauma or you're spiritually sensitive. So yeah, some people talk about psychic attack in that way. Um, and yeah, I think my advice would be if it ever happens to you, if you ever have sleep paralysis, is like to stay calm. Don't try and be fearful. Just allow the time for the soul to come back into the body. Um, and if you feel I don't know, if you feel like it's more energetic than just a physical glitch that has happened, then yeah, I feel like what I do, because sleep paralysis happens to me fairly frequently, actually. It hasn't happened for a while, touch wood, But I went through a phase of it like happening all the time. And I think if you respond with fear, the more likely it is to kind of happen again. But if you feel like it's some kind of energetic interference, it's like through your brain commanding whatever is there to leave, with love, but like telling it that it needs to leave, taking control of the situation can be the thing that means it doesn't happen again. So another thing that I always do before I go to sleep is I do like a spiritual protection ritual, which you may or may not be interested in, but I always imagine first of all like a bubble of light around me, um, and then around like my family, and then around like my whole house, and to not allow like energies that are not of the light to enter my space. So that's something that I do. And you can also call on your own spirit guides if you feel like it, to protect you while you're asleep, because yeah, sleep is like a vulnerable state for your energy body.
Thank you, Beck. I'll be doing that this evening.
There you go. Call in your guides, call in Archangel Michael as well. And yeah, always a good thing to do.
Okay, I love that. Thank you. Thank you as ever for your wisdom and your sharing. And yeah, I hope the listeners took away all the different parts of that, the science, the spirituality, the practical, but also the magic, you know?
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Your time is precious, and we truly appreciate you spending it with us. We look forward to having you join us again soon. So, take care, and we'll catch you in the next episode.